Out comes Dusknoir, looking to get a running start. The opponent pivots out into Skeledirge, and we're full sending the Shadow Ball. The question is, does the opponent respect the damage? Welcome back to the channel. Much like my good friend Callum on Toast, I pride myself on producing unique content you won't see anywhere else, mostly revolving around Shadow Pokemon. We've not had a Team Rocket takeover in absolutely forever, so we're pretty much scraping the barrel at this point. I was looking through my storage, thinking what can we power up and what can we showcase. I've had a Shadow Dusknoir sat best buddied in my storage forever. The main stumbling point putting me off was the fact it's going to cost close to 700,000 Stardust to power up. However, I made that huge investment and here we are. Of course, Dusknoir has many things it doesn't want to see, so we're going to use a Ghost type to bait out the hardest Ghost counter in the form of our Shadow Drifblim, with a Shadow Poliwrath in the lead to combat any Dark types. And without any further ado, let's get into the battles. And in game one, we see the battle of the water types. I am very grateful to see Feraligatr in the lead as our backline doesn't want to see this very spammy Shadow Claw user. Poliwrath completely walls Feraligatr's moveset. However, likewise, they wall our charge moves. We tank the Hydro Cannon, return fire with the Scald. Scald also goes unshielded and gets them into a range where we're going to be able to tank the next Hydro Cannon and commit to the counter farm down. Poliwrath will leave low, but will leave with residual energy. Good to go. The opponent sends out Skeledirge, and we see the instant pivot into Drifblim. The opponent heavily over farms, and I'm calling the disarming voice. Thought process, the opponent probably thinks I've got too much energy to call the bait. Well, trainer, I've got huge cojones, and we're going to return the favour. Mystical Fire, force the Protect Shield, and we're going to now fire off the Shadow Ball. Is the opponent willing to go down 2 shields in the mid-game? They are not. Get that Skeledirge out of here. The opponent's final Pokemon is Poliwrath, and again, we're full sending. Does the opponent respect the damage? They do not. Shadow Ball rocks the opponent incredibly low. We pivot out into Poliwrath, serving up that wham-bam combo play. The Big Mac and the fries. Icy Wind forces the opponent's final Protect Shield, and they're going to concede the match. GG's, and thanks for playing. In the next battle, we see Giratina in the lead. Opposing Shadow Claw users give this team a huge headache. I don't know why I said opposing Shadow Claw users like I'm running Shadow Claw. If Drifblim or Dusknoir had Shadow Claw, they'd probably be a lot more viable than they are currently. We tank the Dragon Claw, return fire with the Ice Wind, and pivot out into the balloon after lowering their attack. Even if it's a Shadow Sneak or Ancient Power, Giratina hits like a wet noodle and it doesn't do all that much damage. The opponent chips me, then send out a low and muck. We fire off the Mystical Fire, forcing that very annoying debuff effect, and we're able to reach the second Mystical Fire on the CMP tie to the potential Dark Pulse. The opponent chooses to invest that Protect Shield, and we're just going to no-shield our balloon. On the off chance they bait, we'll be sitting in a fantastic spot. The opponent full sends the Dark Pulse, and we're just going to take our shield advantage. I'm going to send back out Poliwrath. These poison jabs now not doing all that much damage, as we have lowered their attack by 2 stages. The opponent very quickly returns their poison jabs back to neutral, lowering my defense by 2 stages over farm. Fire off the Icy Wind. Icy Wind secures the knockout, and I am spamming the switch. Let's go, Dusknoir. Let's see if my 700,000 Stardust was as bad as I was anticipating. Out comes Poliwrath. The opponent then sends back out Giratina, and this giant, what even is Dusknoir? I don't know, like a hot air balloon? Is it a balloon? What is it? I don't know, but we're sitting all right. We shield up the Dragon Claw, return fire with the Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse forces the opponent's final Protect Shield. Dusknoir, of course, going to be shielding this. I'm then going to look for the full Hex farm down, and we get it. When Poliwrath does return, we're going to one and throw for good timing, and this Shadow Ball is going to rock Poliwrath deep into the yellow. The opponent going to be looking to fire off the Icy Wind, but Dusknoir wins CMP, reaches the second Shadow Ball, and that is going to be all she wrote. GG's, and thanks for playing. In the next battle, we found ourselves somewhat of a core breaker. We are ABA weak to electric. Of course, when I was building this team, I thought perhaps Burnett would have been a better idea, but I also don't have one of them built, and I'm also pretty poor on Stardust, so we're just rolling with this. The opponent has thrown 5 Volt Switches, so I'm going to shield this. If they've got Thunder Punch, I would have caught the second on Dusknoir. The opponent actually full send the Focus Blast. We're able to counter farm down. The opponent temporarily sends out Tapu Fini, and out comes Registeel. Very fine for me, as we've got access to that Mystical Fire. The first one lands are super effective. In fairness, not all that much damage, as Registeel, being the basic bitch tin can, PvPoke's #1 ranked pick, it is incredibly tick. Although the thing is, with thick Pokemon, they don't hit particularly hard, especially with a 2-stage debuff. We tank the Zap Cannon. I look to fire off the next Mystical Fire just before the next Zap Cannon. I'm thinking, what the heck? How have I miscounted? The opponent's actually on Flash Cannon. Oof. Interesting, no Focus Blast. However, despite the opponent catching me off guard, we're able to come in, counter farm down Registeel and permanently debuff this Tapu Fini with the Icy Wind. I'm then going to stay in, force the opponent to fire off the Nature's Madness, depleting their energy and send out Dusknoir. And this is where you're going to see my shortage in TMs really hurt me. If I had more TMs, I'd be running this Dusknoir on a full Ghost moveset with Ominous Wind as my bait move. In situations like Tapu Fini, Poliwrath, etc., Dark Pulse is actually resisted, whereas Ominous Wind would hit for neutral. So I can't really see why you'd ever want to throw Dark Pulse. Ominous Wind only costs 45 energy as well, rather than the 50 for Dark Pulse, so it's 4-4-4 rather than 5-4-4 for Dark Pulse. So perhaps if I had the correct moveset, would have made the final move and would have won that game. But it is what it is, we're not sad. Moving swiftly on. We see Gator in the lead. The opponent safe switches into Poliwrath, so evidently another trainer that has no respect for electric types. The opponent goes straight for the Icy Wind, and we're going to full send the Shadow Ball. I went Dusknoir here rather than Drifblim, because of course the Icy Wind would hit us for super effective, whereas we only take neutral. However, Poliwrath, incredibly annoying, continually lowering my attack. I'm hoping for a 2-stage debuff. This Shadow Ball will still secure the knockout. The opponent invests their final Protect Shield. You can see the Hexes have done a lot of damage, despite not being a very hard-hitting move. So I'm thinking perhaps 3-stage debuff, this Shadow Ball will still secure the knockout. However, you're very quickly going to find out that was coping. It does nowhere near enough damage. We're now all shields down. However, we have put this into a range where I think I can Hex Farm it down with Drifblim, getting a running start. That Feraligatr matchup is going to be pretty poor in even energy and even shields. However, we've now got a huge energy lead. Back out comes Gator, and they're about to tank a Shadow Ball to the face. Shadow Ball rocks Gator into the yellow. The opponent then pivots out into Ampharos, and I send out Poliwrath. We will survive even a Thunder Punch, and this is where things are going to get somewhat tricky. I can't take this Ampharos out with a Scald, allow Feraligatr to farm me down and get an Ice Beam ready for my Drifblim. So I throw the Icy Wind, knowing it's not going to knock out, and leave them in a range where I'm going to attempt to Hex Farm them down. Now we've lowered their attack, we will be able to survive any one move. The question is, can we Hex Farm them down before they reach the next? Yes, we can. We leave with the Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball is going to be more than enough to pick up the dub. GG's, and thanks for playing. In the next battle, what a lead. The Steel Penguin's going to say no thank you, and we see a safe switch into Shadow Glade, and clearly Jamie Finn is the algorithm confirmed. Unless his opponent's running Synchronoise, we completely wall them. The opponent fires off the triple resisted close combat. Leaf Blade would only be single resisted, but I like this play from the opponent. They're trying to minimise the amount of farm I get. However, we still leave it close to 100 energy. We might actually have 100 energy, but despite that, I'm going to go for good timing. 1 Hex and the Shadow Ball, knowing we're going to be able to outpace the back-to-back Shadow Balls before they reach a move. And we're looking to get this thing out of here. Is the opponent willing to shield their Penguin? No, they're not. They're saving 2 shields for Typhlosion, and this should just be GG's. Typhlosion, even as a non-shadow version, is very glassy. These counters are doing so much damage. I'm just going to 2-shield the first 2 moves they throw and go for the Icy Wind. Even if the opponent calls this bait, which they do, no bait call, we'll be saving this opponent's fate, as they're just going to get counter farm down. I invest the next Protect Shield on the Thunder Punch, of course. There's no point in throwing a charge move here. This Thunder Punch won't be lethal. We're going to be able to counter farm down. And I'm very sorry, trainer. Sometimes just get hard countered. Moving on to the next one. We see Zygarde in the lead. As if this thing wasn't annoying enough in the Master League, it's even more annoying in the Ultra League. The opponent safe switches into Jellicent, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do here. I throw the Scald, giving the opponent a free Hex, which of course has made a bad situation even worse. I'm going to have to sack one of the Ghosts, despite me spending a huge amount of Stardust on this Dusknoir. I think it is the weak link of the team, so we're going to sacrifice it to their Pokegods. We managed to force a Protect Shield with the Dark Pulse, and that's probably best case scenario. The opponent fires off the Surf, securing the knockout. Drifblim also has access to Icy Wind. Not that we're running it, but of course the opponent doesn't know that, so I could always fake it till I make it. We send out Drifblim. I am going to respect the potential Shadow Ball, and the opponent full sends. So a very good shield on my part. The opponent then pivot out into Registeel, and I'm thinking, how do I win this game? We know a Zap Cannon will knock us out. If I can get off 2 Mystical Fires, I think I can put this Registeel in a range where I can shield once, counter farm all the way down, so that's the play we're going to be going for. Zap Cannon, ironically, from Registeel is the hardest hitting move left in the game. I didn't think I'd say that. Despite it being 2-stage debuff, Poliwrath gets a massive counter farm down. We know Jellicent will be returning. We're just going to debuff this thing into oblivion. And the thought process here is if I can get off 2 Icy Winds before the Shadow Ball won't do too much damage. We managed to get off the second Icy Wind before the opponent reaches the Shadow Ball, and you're now going to see that Jellicent isn't going to hit very hard either. Shadow Ball doesn't do much whatsoever. Poliwrath going to be able to get the double resisted counter farm down, and then when Zygarde does return, we're going to be able to outpace to the Icy Wind, which is not only super effective, but also permanently debuffs some Icy Wind lands, and we pivot back out into the balloon. The opponent does have access to Crunch, but it is debuffed, and I did pivot because I don't want to let Zygarde get a massive farm down. Shadow Ball lands for big damage. Zygarde, you buddy, hit like a wet noodle. Crunch doesn't get the job done. The opponent going to be looking for that Dragon Tail farm down. Drifblim says no, gets the Hex farm down, and we take that game. In the next battle, we see an absolutely dreadful lead. Poliwrath doesn't fancy the work of Cresselia, but we do have 2 ghosts in the back, so we safe switch into our trusty hot air balloon safe switch. The opponent fires off the Moonblast. They continue to stay in, so we're going to full send the Shadow Ball. Despite me being a Shadow Ball still doesn't one-shot. The opponent tanks the damage and then send out Cobalion. This is a matchup where having Mystical Fire over Icy Wind is going to come in clutch. I think both Icy Wind and Mystical Fire have their merit. Again, I'm running Mystical Fire essentially because I TM'd it when it first got access to it a few seasons ago and I've not used it since. An argument could have been made that I should have fought for switch advantage here. However, the thought process in not doing that was I don't want to leave Dusknoir down a Protect Shield in the end game. We managed to get the full counter farm down, and bank my energy, and then pivot out into Dusknoir. As I said, we cannot tank a hit particularly well. Have you ever seen Cresselia hit so hard? Out comes Charizard. Charizard probably going to shield everything. We fire off the Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse does force the Protect Shield again. Dusknoir gets farmed down. Another situation where having Ominous Wind would have been clutch, as we would have made that move, as it would have been 4-4 rather than 5-4. Poliwrath is now tasked with cleanup duty. I fire off the Icy Wind immediately, knowing I'll lose CMP. However, this Charizard has so much energy, I wanted to debuff him before the opponent can fire off 2 charge moves. The opponent made my shielding decision easy, not farming up to the Blast Burn. We're now going to shield this move up. We need to be careful, the opponent might try and make the catch. The opponent looks to make that catch. Poliwrath counter farms down Cresselia, leaves with the Scald, and Scald is going to be all she wrote. GG's, and thanks for playing. In the next battle, we see Dragonite in the lead. Dragonite is another thing that's going to cause us a huge headache. We've got 0 fast move pressure into this thing. Counter is resisted, although in fairness it is adding up and Hex doesn't do much whatsoever. The opponent sends out Tapu Fini. I think I should Icy Wind here. I don't know why I Scald, because Scald only has a 30% chance to debuff him now. We bank the Icy Wind and then send out Drifblim. The better play would have been just to get the 100% attack debuff and then pivot out into one of my ghosts, because you can see the opponent's already debuffed me. However, regardless, we're still going to go for the Shadow Ball. We go for a slight undercharge. Shadow Ball is still lethal, and with a lower defense, Dragonite's going to be able to Dragon Tail farm down before we even reach the Mystical Fire. Of course, if we would have reached that move, the opponent lightly shielded, fearful of an Icy Wind. We send back up Poliwrath, fire off the Icy Wind. Icy Wind, force the Protect Shield. We're just going to have to put it all on Dusknoir at this stage. I'm looking to switch out. Switch timer doesn't pop up, and we find ourselves in a very rough situation. The opponent banks a Dragon Claw and then pivot out into Cobalion. We need this Shadow Ball to hit incredibly hard. We're easily going to survive at 1 Stone Edge. We're going to need to save a Protect Shield, because if I shield this, I know, well I didn't know at the time, but I know now that we're going to lose CMP to Dragonite. We tank the Stone Edge. I'm really hoping this Shadow Ball knocks out. If the Shadow Ball is lethal, we've got a chance. Shadow Ball isn't quite lethal. I'm forced to shield this, and then we're going to pray we win CMP. However, again, not having Ominous Wind, we're not even going to find out if we would win CMP, because I'm not doubled up on charging. I throw the Dark Pulse on the CMP tie. The opponent has the move banked, and we're going to take a loss. I don't think I played that game particularly well, but GG's to that opponent. So for those of you that like your stats, Dusknoir actually has a pretty mid attack stat at 154 compared to Dragonite's 176, so we lose CMP by an absolute mile. Dusknoir actually has a pretty similar attack stat to channel mascot Drapion, which quite surprised me because Dusknoir feels insanely glassy, whereas Drapion has pretty respectable bulk. Dusknoir is very similar to something like a Defense Deoxys, where it's got a huge defense stat and very little stamina. In the next battle, we see Registeel in the lead. We throw the Scald on the CMP tie, shield the Zap Cannon, the opponent then pivots out into Skeledirge, and we make a very nice disarming voice catch onto the hot air balloon. The opponent is going to need to full send a Shadow Ball to knock us out. We look to call the bait, and this time the opponent is not baiting. We get vanquished back to our Pokeball. The opponent's still hanging on to 2 Protect Shields. We send back out Poliwrath, fire off 2 counters and the Scald, forcing the opponent's first Protect Shield. I'll be honest, I really wish the opponent just let that go. I'm going to burn the final Protect Shield, blocking up the incoming Disarming Voice. We're going to look to get off the next Scald, which will either force the final Protect Shield or the knockout. If the opponent shields this, we're going to try our luck at making another Disarming Voice catch. Luckily for me, we go 2 for 2 on Disarming Voice catches and manage to sneak the Hex in the process. If the opponent does stay in, we're just going to get rid of them with the Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse in this range, easily going to knock out. If Reggie returns, they are energy drives. We're going to take him 16 lock-ons to the Zap Cannon. So I can throw 5 Hexes, throw this Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse will knock out, and we are going to leave with a little bit of residual energy. Out comes Tapu Fini. We're going to be able to reach the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball going to land for big damage. Shadow Ball rocks him into the yellow. We then pivot out into Poliwrath, not allowing the opponent to farm us down. We're going to fire off the Scald. Scald won't be lethal, but gets him low. The opponent is going to need to send the Nature's Madness, which of course will be knocking out, but Dusknoir has enough HP left to come in, Hex farm down, and we take that game. In the next battle, we see another Giratina in the lead. The opponent safe switches into Sylveon, and I'm thinking, fucking hell, this is going to be the very annoying double charm team. Shadow Ball won't put this thing into Hex farm down range. We're just going to go straight Mystical Fire, lowering the damage output from these charms. When you play a double charm team, take it from me, just use your shields. It's not like they're going to reach all that many charge moves. So I shield up the Psy Shock, fire off the next Mystical Fire, force the Protect Shield, and we're even going to make one more. Best case scenario is if the opponent gives me that final Protect Shield, and then Dusknoir can go nuking the opponent. Does indeed give me that final Protect Shield, and this is beautiful. I want to keep my Dusknoir at full health because, of course, they have got Giratina, which will be doing a lot of fast move pressure. We're going to send up Poliwrath, using it as the damage sponge into a Fairy, running a Psychic coverage move. We're going to be able to tank the Side Shot, commit to the full counter farm down. I'm looking top right to see what comes in. If it's a Charmer that was Scald would be advantageous into, I will throw that. The opponent sends out Togekiss. We fire off the Icy Wind, pivot out into Dusknoir. The opponent sends back out Giratina, and Giratina is about to get cooked. I am going to respect the potential Shadow Sneak. The opponent does full send it. I actually throw 2 here, thinking this Shadow Ball would be lethal. That was alignment. It actually isn't lethal. So a bit of a misplay. I should have went for the correct 3. However, it is what it is. We're going to reach one further Shadow Ball and vanquish Togekiss back to the Pokeball. GG's and thanks for playing. And PS, never run double charm. In the next battle, we see the Poliwrath Mirror, the Shadow versus the Shiny. I'm just going to stay in, allow the opponent to throw a charge move, and then say switch into the Hot Air Balloon. The opponent fires off the Scald. We pivot into Drifblim. The opponent might stay in, looking to debuff me with an Icy Wind, but non-stab Icy Wind isn't all that threatening. Well, it does around 45%, but it's not like we're ever going to get counter farm down. The opponent sends out Feraligatr. Feraligatr greeted with the Shadow Ball to the face, which rocks him below half health. The opponent then opts to throw the Hydro Cannon immediately, which we are going to tank. And I think Jamie Finn is about to make yet another misplay. Looking at the health, I'm thinking we're going to throw 4 counters, throw the Icy Wind as we've left them in the red. Icy Wind will knock out from this range, won't it? No, Jamie, you are so washed up and you're a potato. I am going to shield this up, knowing I am going to be able to debuff whatever comes in. The opponent sends back out Poliwrath. We go straight for the debuff, and we're going to pivot out into Dusknoir, looking to get a running start. The opponent actually invests that Protect Shield, which does me a huge favour. Then pivot out into Skeledirge. This time there is no baiting. Does the opponent respect the damage? Shadow Ball goes unshielded. You know what time it is. Get that Skeledirge off my screen. Back out comes Poliwrath. They throw the Icy Wind. At this stage, we're just going to go straight Dark Pulse. The opponent can look to call the bait, but no bait call. We'll be saving this opponent's fate. The opponent recognises the game's over. We Hex farm down and take that game. Heading into the final battle of the video, we see another Zygarde in the lead. The opponent safe switches into Tentacruel, and we respond with Dusknoir. Scald only comes with a 30% chance to debuff my attack now, so I'm really hoping the RNG gods are in my favour. I pray to them every day, but the RNG gods still slap me in the face with that debuff. We now fire off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball doesn't do too much as Squidward is insanely thick. As I've been debuffed, Dark Pulse now doesn't knock out, but does put them into range where I can Hex farm down. If I was on Icy Wind, I wouldn't shield this, but as we're on Mystical Fire Shadow Ball, I choose Investor Protection. The opponent Goes for the acid spray, hoping they can poison jab farm down. Dusknoir holds strong on a sliver of HP, and I'm just going to blind Dark Pulse whatever comes in, as I highly doubt I tank a quick move. Back out comes Zygarde. That Dark Pulse did nothing. We send out Poliwrath. The opponent pivots out into their own Poliwrath, and we respond with a balloon. We can tank an Icy Wind or a Scald. The opponent actually fire off the Scald. That does do slightly more damage. However, it is more expensive, and we are now going for a very risky bait. Jamie Finn, evidently the best master baiter in the world, as we force the Protect Shield. I'm now going to shield this move up, and we're in the mind games. The opponent's already seen I've baited once. Am I going to full send or am I going to bait? I'm full sending. Does the opponent respect the damage? They do not, despite the opponent Icy Wind debuffing us. We're able to Hex Farm down. Back out comes Zygarde, and this is an intentional debuff, because we know that the opponent hasn't got too much attack. So we're going to debuff them once. We're going to send out Poliwrath, debuff them a second time. Zygarde, your bulk won't be saving you, buddy. The opponent invests that final Protect Shield. You want to see how much this Earthquake does, trainer? The answer is absolutely nothing. The opponent recognises the game's over and concede the match. So those were the battles, my very unique double ghost strategy. I haven't been playing much GBL whatsoever. You can see I was quite rusty and making a few misplays here and there. I'm currently on like 360 battles this season or something. When we get a new Team Rocket takeover event, I will start playing again and tighten up my gameplay. But if you're enjoying the content, smash that like button. If you're new, consider subscribing if you'd like your battles featured on my channel. A link to our battle submission form is down below. And as always, a huge thank you to everyone for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.